Hi, I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime magazine. I'm here today with Debbie Gordon, founder and CEO at Cloud Range Cyber, a virtual cyber range that uses simulation to improve the skills of security operations teams. To learn more about Cloud Range's next-generation cyber range, visit cloudrangecyber.com. Welcome, Debbie. It's great to have you with us.
Thanks for having me, Steve.
So Debbie, before we get started, tell us, for our listeners who may not know, exactly what is a cyber range?
So a cyber range can mean many things. Traditionally, a cyber range was or has been a virtual environment where organizations would do testing, vulnerability testing, and really testing the network defenses. But what it has evolved to, and what are the capabilities today, are that Cloud Range, for example, our cyber range is intended for cyber defenders. So we're focused on people, what they're doing in terms of detection, response, and remediation using the cyber range, in addition to its capability, a traditional capability of a cyber range to be used for detecting vulnerabilities in a mimic network.
So the homepage on the Cloud Range website says responding to a live cyber attack shouldn't be considered practice. Is your team prepared? Are there actually unprepared IT and security teams out there, and how widespread is that?
The answer is yes. Every breach that we hear about represents some sort of lack of preparation. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's somebody's fault that they're not prepared, because it's almost impossible to be prepared for everything. But the challenge in cybersecurity is that you can't wait for an actual event to happen to determine if you know what you're doing and knowing if you're doing it right. And the analogy we often use is with pilots. So you can go to flight school, take classes, read books, watch videos, but I know that I wouldn't want to get on an airplane with a pilot who has never been in a flight simulator, because they may not know what to do or how to do it when an engine goes out or when there's a thunderstorm. And so it's nobody's fault in cybersecurity that they're not necessarily prepared, because up until now, they haven't had the opportunity to train using simulation, and that's what we're able to provide.
So Cloud Range is one of the hot names in the cybersecurity industry right now. We've got the CEO with us, so let's hear the elevator pitch, Debbie, from you.
Sure. So Cloud Range measurably reduces cyber risk by allowing security analysts and incident responders to participate in frequent cyber attack exercises in a protected environment using real tools. And what that means is that we are giving people an opportunity to experience attacks from prior to detection all the way through remediation, and watching a scripted attack happen throughout a network. And they can practice on the detection, investigation, response, and remediation without the fear or risk of taking a company's network down.
So what is Cloud Range's secret sauce, your unique differentiator? How is it that you stand out in this space compared to other companies?
So there are a lot of, as I said earlier, the term cyber range can mean a lot of things, but what makes this very valuable, and why a lot of our customers, they find this so necessary, is that I'll use the flight simulator example again. If I'm going to be flying in an airplane, if I'm a pilot and I'm going to be flying a Boeing 747, I want to make sure that that flight simulator looks and feels like a Boeing 747 and not a McDonnell Douglas, 7XX. And so the same thing goes for cybersecurity. Our simulation platform allows us to have actual licensed security tools, like, for example, Splunk or QRadar or Logarithm, many others, and different firewalls, different EDRs. And so when security analysts, and I'll use that term generically, are going through exercises, they're using those same tools. And so they're learning the critical thinking and the processes necessary to quickly and properly and efficiently detect and respond and remediate cyber attacks. So that's number one. So the actual tools. The second thing is practicing as a team. Just like in sports, you can go to batting practice, you can practice something on your own, but if you don't practice as a team, you're never going to win a game. Same thing goes for security. So our exercises are for multiple people within a team to participate in, because that's how you're functioning in day to day. The other thing is that everything is virtually accessible. There's no requirement for infrastructure or hardware, but it is a very safe and customized environment for each customer.
So, Debbie, right before the COVID-19 shutdown, we did, as an industry, have the RSA conference, take off. Your company, there was just a lot of buzz. You won the security Shark Tank, and I know you stood up in front of 20 CISOs and delivered a 15-minute presentation. What did you tell them?
Well, the first thing that I started with, and I remind everybody this, is that there are thousands of security technologies out there, and they're all trying to problem that may or may not exist. But the problem that everybody knows exists in this industry is the skill shortage and the experience shortage. There simply aren't enough people to manage and handle all of the threats, and that number of threats is growing, and we just don't have enough people to do it. And so this is solving a real problem that every company is experiencing and suffering from in one way or another. They may not have open seats necessarily, but their people certainly don't have enough time, and they haven't had the ability to practice in a safe environment. And so this solves a real problem that everybody has. And we're not selling a technology, we're selling an outcome. We're selling a measurable improvement on the detection and response times of security teams.
And so what was the feedback from some of the CISOs who met you there, and maybe some of the CISOs you've heard from afterwards?
Yeah, so the feedback, number one, is that training and preparing people is not what CISOs and security leaders are good at. It's not what they're supposed to be good at. And so our customers, especially a lot of our Fortune 100 customers, the fact that they can check the box and know that their security team is going to go through monthly exercises, a different attack scenario every time, and that's being taken care of, they can focus on what it is that they need to do to keep their company protected. And then we take care of ensuring that there's a solid and consistent program for their security team. The second thing is the ability to customize the environment. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, it is integral that they're using similar tools, and that's not just open source tools or a generic environment, because that's not going to create the muscle memory that teams need. The metrics are also extremely valuable. One of my favorite quotes is, "Without data, you're just a person with an opinion," and that's W. Edward Deming. And so, it's all well and good if people are going through simulation exercises and they say, "Yeah, I learned a lot, and yeah, I'm better." But we actually measure that, and we have dozens of elements that all map to the NICE framework, and security leaders are able to see an increase in all the different 7 elements and how prepared their teams are, both as teams and the individuals that comprise a team. So it's very, very valuable.
So let's talk about those teams. An organization's SOC analysts, incident responders, after they go through your program, what are their takeaways? Are they more capable, more productive, even happier after having been through it?
Yeah, and so first off, I'll address the word program first. So this is an ongoing program. It's not a once and done training. It's not a year long. There are always more attack scenarios to practice on. So our customers are doing things monthly, and then they continue on perpetually after that. So what happens, though, and this is what I've been really thrilled about, is that not only are they improving their skills measurably, we get formal feedback after each of these sessions that indicates very clearly that the participants, the security analysts and incident responders, they feel more capable. they feel more confident, and they give us reasons why and what they've learned, but also that they enjoy their jobs better because now they have a sense of purpose. And if you think about it, when security analysts are in a live, high pressure environment, and there's a lot of alert fatigue, there's a lot of pressure, and a lot of times we've learned that they're not actually doing the things they think they know how to do because they're afraid. They're often afraid to act. And so this gives them more confidence because they're able to practice. They feel more empowered. They like their jobs better. And what that does for a company is that increases employee retention, which, going back to the skill shortage, that is a huge value. So in addition to minimizing risk and preparing a security team, we're addressing the skill shortage in that way and increasing employee retention. That was kind of an unexpected positive consequence of this.
So aside from the CISOs and the security teams, we've been hearing some great feedback about your company, about Cloud Range from the MSSPs. So talk to us about that. What does that relationship look like?
Yeah, so for managed security service providers, there is obviously an equal value to them as there would be in an enterprise security team, because they need their analysts to be able to be prepared for whatever their customers' incidents may be. And even more so for MSSPs, a lot of them are managing different technologies. So if they're managing a technology for a customer that may be QRadar for one customer or Splunk for another customer, they have the ability to practice on all these different scenarios using whatever technologies they'd be using. So that's number one. But the for managed security service providers, for MSSPs, is that doing these exercises and getting the data back from them is something that they're able to differentiate themselves in the market. And MSSPs are getting very competitive. It's much different than it was 5 years ago. But now they actually have to differentiate themselves beyond just how many analysts they have and whether they're 24/7. They can actually show what they do and how proactive they're being. Finally, and by the way, we have an MSSP customer who actually won business against another MSSP because of the exercises that they're doing. The one other use case for MSSPs is they are actually engaging their customers in some of these exercises, because MSSPs often handle part of the equation, but then they hand it off to their customers at a certain point, and then it's up to the customers to handle the response. So often MSSPs experience scope creep, where their customers expect them to do more than they're actually supposed to be doing. So it's a great way for MSSPs to onboard new customers, to make sure everyone knows what their role is, and then engage them in some exercises over the course of the year so they can kind of practice that handoff and make sure that their customers are closing the loop on an incident.
So I'm curious, for most of your clients, whether they're large enterprises, CISOs and security teams, or MSSPs, when they work with you, is this the first time they've had a cyber range experience?
Most of them, yes. And as I mentioned earlier, cyber ranges were traditionally used for more of an engineering use case. So replicating a network, doing vulnerability testing, testing new products. But in the SOC, they have not had the opportunity to use a cyber range, because if somebody did have a cyber range before, it was usually a military or a nation state, because they were prior very expensive to manage the infrastructure. Now we've made everything cloud-based and customizable at the same time. And so it's the best of both worlds. So yes, this is the first experience that most of these companies are getting. And as one of our customers said, he said, once we started this, we can't not do it.
Right.
Because it's so important.
So we can't have a conversation without touching on the COVID-19 pandemic. You have a virtual platform, which is obviously conducive to, those conditions that CISOs are working under right now. Has it been any more challenging for them? Are things any different now than they were before the pandemic?
So our solution was always designed for security teams, whether they were co-located or distributed or partially distributed. And so our ability to provide our service has not changed. What has been more challenging for CISOs and security leaders, SOC leaders, they're now having to manage people who aren't in the same room as each other if they didn't have a distributed team before. And it's going through these exercises, besides just the technical part of it, people need to learn how to communicate, and they need to be reset. So when people are working at home, you have SOC analysts working at home, they can't just lean over to their neighbor and say, hey, I just saw this alert. What do you think about this? There has to be a whole new protocol and new habits developed. And, a lot of times people are pretty comfortable in their own homes not having to talk to anybody. And so we have to, for lack of a better term, force that on them. And so when we're doing these exercises and people are all logging in from home, we always assign an incident lead. We're always measuring them and them on soft skills and communication and collaboration, because no matter what your technical skills are, if you don't have the communication skills, everything could fail.
So Debbie, how early on are we in the cyber range market, now that it's becoming a little bit more mainstream?
Yeah, so it's still early. And in fact, in just in the last 2 years, we have just seen a lot more interest and understanding of it. People kind of know what it is, but we do spend a lot of time educating the market about what a cyber range is and some of the different use cases. But it's becoming imperative because back to the beginning, people can't practice in a production environment. You can't wait for a live attack to happen to see how well you analyze it, investigate it, and even detect it in the first place. And so now that this technology and our solution is available, seeing a lot of companies budget for it. They're coming to us saying, okay, how do we get started? And I think it's becoming, back to what my customer said, you can't not do it once it's out there. Once there is an opportunity for people to train, imagine when the flight simulator was invented. You don't have people learning how to fly an airplane and then just going straight to an airplane.
So Debbie, CISOs, are they paying attention to cyber ranges directly? Are they having conversations with you, or is this something along the lines of SIM tools and other technologies that their staff is looking into and bringing back?
So both. So we're working both with CISOs as well as SOC managers and directors. For the CISOs, this is very important because of the metrics. And so obviously they don't want to get into the day-to-day of the skills of the people, but they're able to see the measurable improvements in the detection and response times. And as you probably know, a lot of, or the simplest form of some metrics are mean time to detect and mean time to respond, which are lagging indicators. We're now able to create a leading indicator by showing the improvement of response times in simulations. And so that's very important for CISOs because it's something that they can actually touch, they can see, and that it increases their confidence in their team, and they're able to use that in reporting to the C-suite and the board as well. For the SOC managers, they're the ones that are hiring analysts, and they can only hire the best that are there. And so all they have had to go on is people's years of experience, some certifications next to their name. But this also now gives them the confidence to watch their team improve on an ongoing basis so they can be better at what they do as well.
Tell us what a program looks like for a large enterprise, for a Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company. Yeah. When they first engage with you, what exactly do you do? What does your staff do? What does the program look like?
So when we first start working with a customer, we will come up with what we call a prescription almost. And so we ideally, and the best practice is that a team goes through an exercise once a month. And now this isn't like a big, some people think about tabletop exercises where it's a major event. This is, let's say, the first Friday of every month where a team or a subset of a team will go through an exercise. And so we get that scheduled out, or we have an idea of the app. It'll be about once a month. for an instructor-led session. And these instructor-led sessions are all done virtually. And the instructor is very important because AI cannot teach soft skills and assess soft skills and all the different skills and roles of the people. So an instructor is a very important part of this. It's not necessary from a technical perspective, but the outcome is much better. So we work with, let's call it the SOC manager in this case. We'll work with the SOC manager to look at what are the skills and the roles of the team. What are some different scenarios that we might want to work through? And then we go from month to month with a plan in mind, but we're measuring as we go, and we're assessing how well a team did, what areas they need to work on, and then we'll adjust the next exercise to that. Between these instructor-led sessions, we also have open range time. And this is really exciting because this is a time when the teammates can go into the range, they log on during a certain time, there's an actual attack playing out, and then they can go in and practice on different things that they may have learned in a previous session that they want to just go back and explore, and knowing that that's something that may come up in their jobs day to day. So that's what a trajectory looks like and an engagement looks like for a team. But what companies are doing, they're bringing in more teams. So it's not just, let's say it's not just the tier 1 or tier 2 analysts. They also may bring in some people from networking or the firewall team. And then a couple of times a year, we may do a full-fledged exercise with a C-suite. So traditionally a tabletop exercise, we call this tabletop 2.0, where we're engaging the SOC team with what happens before a traditional tabletop exercise. So it's a full circle. So the idea is that a cyber range, and when companies work with Cloud Range, they're not just doing it for a specific team. As they incorporate it more, the cyber range becomes really a fundamental tool in their organization. So they're bringing in more people, they're doing a lot more different exercises, they're testing different scenarios, and the usage of it grows, and it, as we say, it becomes part of the DNA of the organization.
So tell us about your instructors. What do they look like, the Cloud Range instructors? How long have they been with you? How do you recruit them?
Our instructors are amazing. They are people who have built and run SOCs. They are ethical hackers. They are people who love what they do. For one thing, it's a dream job for them because they get to work with all these teams. They get to build scenarios. They get to teach how it happens, and they've been there and done that. So these aren't just people following a script. These are people who have been in these situations. They've been analysts. They've been leaders, and then they're able to help a team understand what works and what doesn't, especially from a communication standpoint.
So do the instructors get to know the clients, and do they tend to work with those same clients over and over again?
Absolutely. Yep. And it's very important. And it's funny because in this industry, there's so much automation, but this is one part where we have to go back to the basics. We have to go back to the human touch because that's where the impact is. As I said a few minutes ago, from a technical perspective, an instructor is not required. Somebody can go through these exercises without an instructor, but the instructor is going to really impact the outcome, the learning and the growth and the development.
So Cloud Range has such a great story. Debbie, tell us where you go from here. What's the strategic plan, looking further out the next, 2 years, 5 years? Where are you taking this company?
Well, we're growing fast. We're working with a lot of large enterprises right now. We've built our reseller and partner channel. We have some white label partners, so companies who are providing our services on top of their existing services. So incident response companies are packaging this with their existing services. We're working with also some very large technology manufacturers, SIM products, for example, where they're also packaging our services. When they're selling a SIM license, they're giving the customer some training sessions using our simulation tool with their product embedded in it so that it can help enable their customers. So we're working a lot more with these manufacturers, growing our partner channel, and then of course working with a lot more enterprises. So we're really excited, and there's a lot of opportunity ahead.
Well, we've got our eyes on you. The large enterprise CISOs are watching you, their security teams, the MSPs. So thank you for joining us, Debbie. We'll be back to do this again.
Thank you so much, Steve. Appreciate it.
I'm Steve Morgan, founder of Cybersecurity Ventures and editor-in-chief at Cybercrime Magazine. You can follow all of our media at cybercrimemagazine.com. Joining us today was Debbie Gordon, founder and CEO at CloudRange, a virtual cyber range that uses simulation to improve the skills of security operations teams. To learn more about CloudRange's next generation cyber range, visit cloudrangecyber.com.